Hey guys, tonight we slip into the warm, starlit embrace of ancient Egypt, where the Nile's gentle ripples carry whispers of love, lust, and everything in between. Picture yourself standing on a muddy bank, the air thick with lotus scent, as a young couple sneaks a glance under the moonlight, their fingers brushing like papyrus reeds. Love here isn't just roses and candlelight, it's a gritty dance of survival, gods, and social contracts. Fair warning, you probably won't survive the sheer weirdness of their contraceptive recipes. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're barefoot on the Nile's edge, the water cool against your toes as the heartbeat of ancient Egypt pulses around you. This river isn't just a lifeline for crops, it's the vein of romance, carrying lovers' hopes and secrets. The Egyptians saw the Nile as a mirror of life, itself fertile, unpredictable, and sacred. Every year, its flood brought silt that fed the fields, but it also set the rhythm for human connection. Couples timed their lives to its cycles, from planting to harvest, and yes, even their intimate moments. Mainstream history tells us the Nile's inundation, starting around June, was a time of celebration when communities gathered to honor the river's gift. Marriages often spiked after the flood, as families secured alliances with the promise of fertile land. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some Egyptians believed the Nile's silt could boost fertility in more than just crops. Women would smear it on their bodies, hoping its magic would spark new life. Sounds like a muddy spa day gone wild, right? You wander further, noticing how the river shapes desire. Villages hug the banks, their mud brick homes glowing under the sun. In these tight-knit communities, love isn't a private affair, it's a public performance, watched by neighbors, priests, and even the gods. Historians still argue whether these relationships were truly romantic or just pragmatic deals, sealed with a dowry and a handshake. Some say love was a luxury, reserved for poems, while others insist couples found ways to steal tender moments. You can almost hear the gossip as you pass a market stall, where a merchant's daughter eyes a fisherman, their glances darting like minnows. The Nile's current pulls you deeper into their world, where every touch, every whispered word, carries the weight of survival. As you stroll, you notice the river's role in daily rituals. Women wash linen in the shallows, their laughter mixing with the water's lap. Men haul fish, their muscles gleaming, maybe showing off for someone watching. The Nile isn't just scenery, it's a matchmaker. Young couples meet here, under the guise of chores, their flirtations hidden in plain sight. Imagine trying to catch someone's eye while balancing a water jar. Talk about multitasking. The river's flow mirrors the slow build of attraction, steady but unstoppable. Yet, it's not all sweet glances. The same water that nurtures love carries risks. Crocodiles lurk, and one wrong step could end your date night permanently. Egyptians even had a god, Sobek, to appease these scaly deal-breakers. Offerings of fish or small trinkets were tossed into the river, a bribe for safe passage and maybe a little romantic luck. You pause by a cluster of papyrus reeds, their feathery tops swaying. Papyrus isn't just for writing, it's a symbol of life, love, and creation. Couples would weave these stalks into mats for their homes, a quiet act of building a future together. But don't get too dreamy. Practicality rules here. A quirky practice involved using papyrus ash in love potions, believed to kindle desire when slipped into a crush's beer. Imagine the bartender's face. One barley brew, hold the ash. The Nile's influence seeps into every corner of intimacy, from the practical to the downright strange. As you linger, the sun dips low, casting gold across the water. The day's heat fades, and you feel the pull of evening, when lovers might slip away to whisper under the stars. The river's edge buzzes with life, but it's also a place of quiet reflection. You imagine a young woman, her coal-lined eyes scanning the horizon, wondering if her suitor's boat will dock tonight. The Nile carries her hopes, just as it carries the silt that feeds her village. Love in ancient Egypt is tied to this river, its rhythms, its dangers, its gifts. You're starting to see how every aspect of life here, from flirting to family, flows from its waters. As you turn from the bank, the village lights flicker, inviting you to step closer to the homes where these stories unfold. The Nile's pulse lingers in your ears, a reminder that love, like the river, is both eternal and ever-changing. You're now wandering through the dusty streets of an ancient Egyptian village, the Nile's hum fading behind you as you step into the heart of daily life. Mud brick houses line the path, their flat roofs catching the late afternoon sun. This is where romance blooms, not in grand palaces, but in the quiet corners of ordinary homes. The air smells of baked bread and faint incense, and you can hear the clatter of looms and the chatter of neighbours. Love here isn't just a feeling, it's woven into the rhythm of chores, meals, and stolen moments. You're about to peek into these homes, where couples navigate the messy, beautiful reality of intimacy. Mainstream history confirms that ancient Egyptian households were the backbone of society, typically housing extended families under one roof. Parents, kids, and sometimes grandparents shared tight spaces, making privacy a rare treasure. You duck into a modest home, its walls painted with simple patterns of lotus flowers. The main room is alive with activity. A woman kneads dough, a child plays with a clay toy, and a man repairs a sandal. But your eyes catch a subtle glance between the couple, a spark that says more than words. These moments are the heartbeat of their love, tucked between the grind of survival. A quirky tidbit? Some Egyptians kept small statuettes of Bes, the dwarf-like god of love and protection, by their beds. They believed his cheeky grin warded off bad vibes and boosted bedroom luck. Imagine praying to a deity who looks like he's mid-laugh at a bad joke. As you linger, you notice the home's layout shapes romance. Most houses have a small alcove or curtained corner for sleeping, where couples snatch moments of closeness. You imagine them whispering after dark, the kids finally asleep, their voices muffled by reed mats. But don't romanticize it too much. Historians still argue whether these marriages were driven by love or duty. Some say contracts ruled, with dowries and property sealing the deal, while others point to love letters etched on potsherds as proof of real affection. Either way, you're standing in a space where practicality and passion collide. The woman might slip her husband an extra flatbread, a quiet gesture of care, while he carves her a wooden comb. Small acts, big feelings. You step outside, the sun now dipping low, casting long shadows. Neighbours gossip by a communal oven, their eyes flicking toward a young couple lingering too long by the water jar. Public scrutiny is relentless here. Flirtation is a performance for the village audience. You chuckle, thinking how their dating drama could rival any modern reality show. Yet, there's a rhythm to it. Couples work side by side, grinding grain or weaving linen, their hands brushing in ways that feel accidental but aren't. These tasks aren't just chores, they're chances to connect. A woman might tease her partner about his sloppy weaving, and he'd fire back with a grin, their banter a kind of foreplay. It's not all smooth, though arguments flare over who forgot to feed the goats, and you can almost hear the eye rolls. The quirky side of domestic life pops up again as you spot a clay jar labelled with a fertility charm. Some couples mixed herbs like coriander into their beer, believing it sparked desire or ensured healthy kids. Sounds like a questionable cocktail recipe, but who are we to judge? The practical side dominates, though. Women manage the household, from baking to brewing, while men handle heavier labour like fishing or farming. Yet, these roles blur when it comes to love. You picture a wife sneaking a lotus flower into her husband's satchel, a silent, "I'm thinking of you." The Nile, remember that muddy lifeline? Its influence creeps in here. Two families rely on its fish and crops, which means love is often tied to the harvest's success. No pressure, right? As you weave through the village, you notice how homes reflect status. Wealthier families have larger houses with private courtyards, where couples might steal a kiss under an acacia tree. Poorer homes, like the one you're in. Cram everyone together, making intimacy a logistical puzzle. Yet, love finds a way. You imagine a couple lying on their roof at night, staring at the stars, whispering dreams of a bigger harvest or a new baby. The night air cools your skin, and you feel the weight of their world. Love is a luxury, but it's also a necessity, gluing families together through floods and droughts. The village hums with life, each home a tiny stage for human connection. And you're ready to slip closer to the gods who oversee it all. You're now drifting through the incense-heavy air of an ancient Egyptian temple. The stone walls cool under your fingertips as you move deeper into the realm of the gods. The Nile's distant murmur and the village's chatter fade, replaced by the low hum of priests chanting. Here, in these sacred spaces, love and intimacy aren't just human affairs, they're divine mandates, shaped by deities who meddle in mortal hearts. You're about to see how the god's gaze casts a long shadow over every stolen kiss and whispered vow. Mainstream history tells us that religion was the backbone of ancient Egyptian life, with gods like Hathor, the goddess of love and music, dictating the rules of romance. Her temples, like the one you're standing in, were hubs for worshippers, seeking her blessing for fertility or passion. You pause by a carved relief of Hathor, her cow horns framing a serene smile. Couples would come here, offering flowers or small jars of perfume, hoping she'd nudge their love life in the right direction. The air buzzes with their prayers, and you can almost feel the weight of their hopes. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some devotees believed Hathor's sacred sistrum, a rattle-like instrument, could literally shake up their love life if played during rituals. Imagine shaking a glorified tambourine to charm your crush talk about divine rhythm. As you wander deeper, the temple's flickering torchlight dances on the walls, painting scenes of gods entwined in cosmic embraces. The Egyptians saw love as a divine force, mirroring the unions of deities like Isis and Osiris, whose myth of death and rebirth was a blueprint for devotion. You picture couples kneeling before altars, their hands clasped, asking for a bond as eternal as the gods. But it's not all lofty spirituality. Priests, ever the middlemen, offered love spells, etched on amulets, promising to bind hearts or spark desire. You smirk, imagining a priest scribbling a spell like it's a cosmic dating app. Historians still argue whether these rituals were genuine magic or just clever marketing for temple donations. Either way, the faithful believed, and you can't help but feel the pull of their faith. You step into a smaller chamber, where the air grows warmer, thick with myrrh. This is where intimate rituals unfold, offerings for fertility, protection, or even heartbreak. Women might bring tiny figurines of children, hoping for Hathor's gift, while men offer beer or bread for virility. The gods don't just watch, they're active players in the bedroom drama. Take Bes, that cheeky dwarf god from the village homes. His image pops up here too, painted on walls to guard against bad luck in love. You chuckle, thinking how his goofy grin must have been the ancient equivalent of a lucky rabbit's foot. The temple's energy feels alive, a mix of reverence and desperation, as if every prayer is a gamble with divine odds. Outside, you notice a festival brewing, with music and laughter spilling from the temple courtyard. Hathor's festivals were infamous for loosening inhibitions, think less solemn ceremony, and more divinely sanctioned party. Men and women danced, drank, and flirted under the god's approving gaze. You imagine sneaking a sip of spiced beer, the kind they brewed for these events, and joining the crowd. The line between sacred and sensual blurs here, and you sense how the gods gave mortals permission to let loose. But don't get too carried away. Temples also enforced rules. Priests preached fidelity, at least for women, and some texts hint at punishments for straying too far. The gods, it seems, were both matchmakers and morality police. As you linger, the temple's quiet corners reveal more. Hidden alcoves, veiled by linen curtains, were spots for private offerings or whispered confessions. You imagine a young woman slipping in, clutching a lotus flower, praying for her lover's return from a Nile trading trip. The gods' influence feels omnipresent, their statues looming like cosmic chaperones. Remember the Nile's muddy fertility charms? They're echoed here in sacred pools, where priests blessed water for rituals tied to love and birth. The connection between river, gods, and human desire is inescapable. As the chants grow softer, you feel the temple's pull fading, urging you toward the glittering world physics. You're now gliding through the opulent halls of a pharaoh's palace, the air heavy with the scent of myrrh and polished stone gleaming under torchlight. The Nile's pulse and the temple's chants feel distant as you step into the world of royal romance, where love is less about hearts and more about power, legacy, and divine drama. The walls are painted with scenes of gods and conquests, but behind the grandeur, you're about to uncover the steamy, scandal-soaked passions of Egypt's elite. Mainstream history tells us that pharaohs often married multiple wives to secure alliances and ensure heirs, their bedrooms as much a political stage as a private retreat. You pause by a golden throne, imagining a pharaoh like Ramesses II, who had over 100 children, juggling wives and concubines like a royal multitasker. His great wife, Nefertari, was celebrated in poetry and statues, her beauty immortalized at Abu Simbel. But don't get too starry-eyed. Royal love was a chess game. Marriages sealed treaties with foreign kingdoms, like when Hittite princesses joined Egyptian courts. You can almost hear the rustle of diplomatic papyrus, each wife a pawn in a global power play. Yet, a quirky tidbit lightens the mood. Some pharaohs gifted their wives pet gazelles, decked out with jeweled collars. Imagine explaining that to the palace cleaners. As you wander deeper, the harem quarters beckon, veiled by linen curtains. Here, royal women lived in luxury, but also competition, their status tied to producing sons. You picture Nefertari, her coal-lined eyes sharp, navigating court intrigue while stealing moments with her king. These relationships weren't always cold love letters from pharaohs to their queens, etched on stone, hint at genuine affection. But scandal lurks. Take Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh, and his obsession with Nefertiti. Historians still argue whether their intense bond depicted in statues with rare tenderness was a true love story or a calculated display of divine unity. You smirk, thinking their PDA could have sparked ancient Egypt's version of tabloid gossip. Pharaoh can't keep hands off queen again. The palace hums with secrets. Concubines, often daughters of nobles, vied for the pharaoh's attention, their beauty a ticket to influence. You imagine one slipping a lotus-scented note under his door, hoping for a late-night summons. But it's not all romance. Jealousy simmered. Rival wives plotted, sometimes poisoning the air with more than just incense. A quirky practice? Some royal women used spells, like burning wax figurines of rivals, to eliminate competition. Sounds like a soap opera with higher stakes and worse haircuts. The pharaoh, meanwhile, played god-king, his virility tied to Egypt's prosperity. A barren season could spark whispers that his bedroom prowess was failing the Nile itself. You step onto a balcony overlooking the royal gardens, where palm trees sway under the stars. Here, pharaohs hosted lavish banquets, with wine and music loosening tongues and inhibitions. You can almost taste the date wine, sweet and heady, as dancers swirl in diaphanous linen. These nights often led to romantic escapades, but they weren't private. Courtiers watched every move, gossiping about who shared the royal bed. You chuckle, imagining a scribe jotting down, "Pharaoh flirted again," like it's his daily report. The pressure was immense. Pharaohs needed heirs to secure the dynasty, and every encounter carried the weight of divine duty. Remember Hathor's temple rituals? They echo here, with royal couples offering gold to fertility gods, praying for a son to please the gods and silence the court. As you linger, the palace's grandeur feels both intoxicating and claustrophobic. The pharaoh's love life was a public spectacle, his wives symbols of Egypt's might. Yet, in quiet moments, you imagine a king stealing a glance at his favorite queen, their fingers brushing over a shared goblet. These human flickers pierce the divine facade. The Nile's influence lingers, even Heretz. Floods dictated the wealth that fueled these lavish courts, and its rhythms set the calendar for royal unions. As you turn from the balcony, the palace's golden glow fades, pulling you toward the softer, poetic whispers of love etched on papyrus. You're now holding a fragile papyrus scroll, its edges worn but inked with words that hum with longing. The palace's grandeur fades as you step into a quieter world where ancient Egypt's lovers poured their hearts onto reeds, crafting poetry that feels like a warm breeze across the Nile. You're surrounded by the soft rustle of scribes' work, their pens scratching out verses that capture love's ache and ecstasy. These aren't just words, they're windows into souls, and you're about to read their secrets. Mainstream history confirms that ancient Egyptians were prolific writers, using papyrus to record everything from taxes to tender love poems. These poems, often called love songs, were composed as early as the New Kingdom, around 1550–1070 BCE, and found in collections like the Papyrus Harris 500. You unroll the scroll, imagining a young scribe penning lines for a lover, maybe a merchant's daughter or a temple singer. The verses are vivid. Your love has pierced my heart like a lotus in bloom. You feel the heat in those words, as if the writer's still blushing nearby. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some poems were written on ostraca-broken pottery shards because papyrus was pricey. Imagine confessing your love on a chipped plate because you couldn't afford the good stuff. Budget romance, ancient style. As you trace the inked hieroglyphs, you sense the raw emotion. These poems aren't shy, they describe lovers' bodies with a frankness that makes you raise an eyebrow. One line compares a woman's skin to polished alabaster, another likens a man's voice to honey. You smirk, thinking modern pickup lines could learn a thing or two. The poems often cast lovers as nature itself, women as lotus flowers, men as falcons soaring free. It's not just flowery talk, it's a worldview where love mirrors the Nile's fertility, that life-giving pulse you felt on the riverbank. The poems were sung or recited, maybe at festivals or quiet evenings, their rhythm lulling listeners like an ASMR track for the soul. But don't get too dreamy. Historians still argue whether these poems reflect real romance or idealized fantasies. Some say they were written by elite scribes for courtly audiences, more art than diary. Others insist they capture genuine feelings, passed down by commoners and polished by professionals. You picture a lovesick farmer dictating his heart to a scribe, hoping his crush hears the words at a harvest feast. Either way, the poems are a bridge between hearts, and you're standing on it. The imagery pulls you in, you can almost smell the jasmine in a lover's hair, or feel the cool night air as two sweethearts whisper these lines under a sycamore tree. You pause, noticing how the poems blend desire with practicality. One verse begs a lover to come quickly, but another reminds her to bring bread for their rendezvous. You chuckle, nothing says romance like a picnic plan. These poems weren't just for swooning, they were social tools, shared to flirt, woo, or even mend fights. A quirky detail? Some were inscribed with spells, blending poetry with magic to bind a lover's heart. Imagine slipping a charmed poem under someone's door, like texting a heart emoji with a side of sorcery. The Nile's influence lingers here. Too many poems mention its waters, comparing love to a river's unstoppable flow. Remember that silt-smeared fertility charm? It's echoed in verses that call love a flood that drowns the heart. As you roll up the papyrus, you hear faint music from a distant festival where these poems might be sung. The words linger, intimate yet universal, tying you to lovers long gone. You imagine a woman reciting these lines to her partner, her voice soft as the desert night, their hands entwined. The scroll feels alive, its ink a heartbeat. Love in ancient Egypt, you realize, wasn't just lived, it was written, sung, and shared, a legacy that outlasts the reeds it was etched on. The air grows warmer, pulling you toward the practical world of marriage, where these poetic dreams meet the hard edge of reality. You're now weaving through a bustling village marketplace, the air thick with the scent of fresh bread, ripe dates, and the faint tang of Nile fish. The poetry's soft whispers fade as you step into the practical world of ancient Egyptian marriage, where love meets contracts, dowries, and family expectations. Stalls overflow with goods, and you hear the haggling of merchants and the laughter of women bartering linen. Here, unions are less about starry-eyed romance and more about survival, status, and securing the next generation. You're about to navigate the business of love, where hearts and households are bound by more than just sweet words. Mainstream history tells us that marriage in ancient Egypt was a social contract, often arranged to strengthen family ties or economic stability. You pause by a stall where a father negotiates a dowry, his daughter's future hinging on baskets of grain and a few copper deben. Marriages were rarely forced, but they were practical couples needed to pool resources to thrive in a world ruled by the Nile's floods. A bride might bring linens or jewelry, while a groom offered land or livestock. You imagine the bride, her coal-lined eyes nervous but hopeful, clutching a small amulet for luck, a quirky tidbit. Some marriage contracts included clauses letting women divorce if their husband slacked off, like a prenup for lazy spouses. Imagine serving your partner with "you didn't feed the goats" as legal grounds. As you wander deeper, the market's energy reveals the social dance of matchmaking. Families play matchmaker, eyeing partners for their kids based on wealth, reputation, or even shared fields. You overhear a mother praising her son's fishing skills to a neighbor, her tone suspiciously sales pitchy. It's not all cold calculation, though. Young couples often had a say, especially in smaller villages where stolen glances at the Nile's edge, remember those, could spark a deal. You smirk, picturing a nervous suitor fumbling his pitch to a girl's father, probably sweating more than the desert sun demands. Historians still argue whether love played a big role in these arrangements. Some say romance was secondary to survival, while others point to those papyrus love poems as proof that passion could sway even the most practical match. The market buzzes with wedding preep women weave fine linen for bridal dresses, their fingers quick as they gossip about the latest betrothal. You notice a bride-to-be trying on a beaded collar, her friends teasing her about her groom's crooked smile. Weddings weren't lavish like in Pharaoh's palaces. They were simple, often just a feast with beer and bread, sealed with vows before family. The couple would move into a shared home, sometimes with in-laws, making privacy a rare treat. You chuckle, thinking how sharing a mud brick house with your mother-in-law might test even the strongest love. Practicality reigns here. Marriage meant merging households, sharing chores, and banking on the Nile's next flood to feed the family. That river, always there, ties love to the land's rhythm. A quirky custom catches your eye. Some couples exchanged bronze rings or amulets, not as engagement tokens but as symbols of mutual obligation. One contract even promised the wife a monthly grain allowance romance with a side of groceries. You picture the groom handing over a ring, muttering, "Don't spend it all on lotus flowers." These agreements weren't just about money. They protected women, giving them rights to property or alimony if things soured. You feel the weight of these deals, each one a balance of trust and pragmatism. The market's noise pulls you back. A vendor hawks fertility herbs, claiming they'll ensure a son. The crowd laughs, but some women buy, tucking the herbs into their baskets with a hopeful glance. As you leave the market, the sun dips low, casting gold over the village. You imagine a newlywed couple stepping into their home, the weight of their contract mingling with the spark of those poetic whispers from the papyrus. Marriage here is a bridge between dreams and duty, built on the Nile's promise of life. The market's hum fades, and you feel a pull toward the rituals that turn these unions into cradles for new generations. You're now standing in a dimly lit room, the air thick with the scent of burning resin and the faint hum of a priestess's chant. The village market's bustle fades as you step into the intimate world of ancient Egyptian fertility rituals, where couples turn to magic, gods, and the Nile's gifts to summon new life. Mud brick walls are adorned with small carvings of Taweret, the hippo goddess of childbirth, her round belly a promise of hope. You're about to uncover the lengths people went to for babies, blending faith, folklore, and some downright bizarre practices. Mainstream history tells us that fertility was a cornerstone of ancient Egyptian society, with children seen as blessings to secure family legacies and appease the gods. You watch a young woman kneel before a small altar, offering a clay figurine shaped like a child to Hathor, the love goddess you met in the temple. These rituals were common, especially for newlyweds who needed heirs to work the fields or honor ancestors. The Nile's fertility, remember that muddy silt from the riverbank? It's central here. Two couples believed its life-giving power extended to their bodies. A quirky tidbit. Some women drank a potion of crushed lotus seeds and beer, thought to boost conception. You smirk, imagining the tasteless romantic elixir, more swampy homebrew gone wrong. As you linger, the room's intimacy draws you in. Couples would visit priests or wise women, seeking blessings or spells to ensure pregnancy. You picture a nervous husband handing over a basket of dates for a charm, his wife clutching a BE's amulet for luck. These rituals weren't just spiritual, they were practical, addressing the high stakes of survival in a world where infant mortality was common. Historians still argue whether these practices were purely symbolic, or if Egyptians believed they directly influenced biology. Some say the rituals eased anxiety, while others point to detailed medical papyri, like the Ebers papyrus, that mix herbal remedies with magic. You feel the couple's hope, their hands clasped as they whisper prayers, the flickering oil lamp casting shadows like tiny dreams. The quirky side of fertility rituals pops up again as you spot a strange concoction on the altar: crocodile dung mixed with honey, used as a contraceptive or fertility aid, depending on the recipe. You wince, thinking, and you thought modern medicine was rough? This odd practice, recorded in ancient texts, shows how far Egyptians went to control or encourage conception. The priestess might smear it on a woman's skin or burn it as incense, claiming it channeled the Nile's primal energy. You can't help but laugh, imagining the couple's faces as they nod politely, probably regretting their visit. Yet, these rituals were sacred, tying human creation to the gods' cosmic order. The Nile's flood, after all, wasn't just about crops, it was a divine signal that life, in all forms, could thrive. You step outside, where a small crowd gathers for a fertility festival. Women dance with palm fronds, their movements mimicking the river's flow, while men offer fish to Sobek, the crocodile god, for virility. The air buzzes with laughter and music, but there's an undercurrent of Urgent Severy chant. Every offering is a plea for a child to carry the family name. You notice a woman tying a red cord around her wrist, a charm for safe pregnancy, her eyes bright with hope. These rituals knit the community together, blending joy with the weight of expectation. Remember those love poems? Their lotus imagery echoes here, as couples invoke nature's abundance to mirror their own. As the festival's energy fades, you feel the quiet desperation of those still waiting for a child. Some turn to oracles, asking if the gods will grant their wish, while others visit sacred pools, dipping their hands in water blessed by priests. The Nile's presence lingers, its life-giving silt, a constant reminder of creation's power. You imagine a couple standing by the river at dawn, offering a small boat of reeds to the current, praying for a baby. The air grows still, and you sense the pull of another aspect of love beauty, and the lengths Egyptians went to enhance it for their partners. You're now standing in a sunlit courtyard, the air warm with the scent of crushed herbs and melted beeswax. The fertility rituals chants fade as you step into the world of ancient Egyptian beauty, where looking good isn't just for nittiets, a sacred art to captivate hearts and honor the gods. Around you, women grind malachite into green powder, while men dab oil on their skin, all chasing allure in a world ruled by appearances. You're about to try their tricks, from kohl-lined eyes to some truly wild cosmetics, and see how beauty shaped love's dance. Mainstream history tells us that Egyptians, both men and women, obsessed over personal grooming, believing beauty reflected divine favor and social status. You watch a woman apply kohl, a black paste of galena, to her eyes, her movements precise as she draws sharp lines that make her gaze pop. This wasn't just makeup, it was protection against the sun's glare and evil spirits, doubling as a seduction tool. You imagine her catching her lover's eye across a crowded market, that coal giving her an unfair advantage. A quirky tidbit. Some Egyptians used crocodile fat as a skin moisturizer, believing its slick sheen channeled the Nile's vitality. You grimace, thinking slathering on reptile grease might not scream date night today. As you linger, the courtyard hums with activity. Women mix henna with water, painting intricate patterns on their hands, while men shave their heads to stay cool, topping them with scented wigs. Beauty here is a full-time job, and you feel the effort. Mirrors of polished bronze catch the light, reflecting faces adorned with care. Egyptians believed looking good pleased Hathor, that love goddess from the temple, and could sway a partner's heart. You picture a young man rubbing myrrh oil into his skin, hoping his crush notices at a festival. Historians still argue whether these beauty rituals were about personal desire or social pressure. Some say they were expressions of individuality, while others see them as rigid status symbols, especially for the elite. Either way, you're caught in the glow of their obsession. The quirky side resurfaces as you spot a clay jar labeled with a recipe for eternal youth. It's a paste of milk, honey, and Jep donkey urine, thought to smooth wrinkles. You chuckle, imagining the sales pitch. Smell like a stable, look like a god. These concoctions weren't just for show, they were practical, combating the desert's harsh sun and sand. Women wore red ochre on their lips and cheeks, a pop of colour that mimicked youth and fertility, while men used scented oils to signal wealth. You tried dabbing imaginary jasmine oil on your wrists, feeling briefly fancy until you remember the donkey part. The Nile's influence is here, too. Its clay was ground into face masks, and its lotus flowers scented perfumes, tying beauty to the river's lifeblood. You wander to a shaded corner, where a woman weaves a wig from human hair, its strands gleaming with resin. Wigs were unisex status symbols, worn to impress at banquets or seduce in private. You imagine a couple flirting under torchlight, their wigs slightly askew after too much wine. Beauty wasn't just skin deep, it was a performance, like those love poems you read on papyrus. A woman might spend hours on her look, knowing her husband's gaze lingered longer when she sparkled. Men too played the game, their clean-shaven faces and oiled muscles a nod to divine ideals. You smirk, thinking how their grooming routines could rival a modern influencer's. As the courtyard quiets, you notice the social stakes of beauty. A flawless appearance could elevate a woman's marriage prospects or secure a man's place in court. But it wasn't easy. Cosmetics were costly, and time spent grinding pigments stole hours from chores. You feel the weight of their effort, each stroke of coal a bid for love or respect. The Nile's rhythm, always present, fed the plants and minerals for these rituals, linking beauty to the land. As the sun dips, casting a golden haze, you're pulled toward the shadowy edges of desire, where society's rules bend and forbidden passions whisper. You're now slipping through the shadows of a quiet alley, the courtyard's cosmetic glow fading as you venture into the hidden corners of ancient Egyptian society. The air feels heavier, charged with whispers of forbidden desires and the risks of crossing lines drawn by gods and neighbours. The Nile's steady hum is distant, but its moral weight lingers, shaping what's allowed and what's taboo in matters of the heart. You're about to tiptoe through the unspoken rules of love, where passion meets punishment and secrecy thrives. Mainstream history tells us that ancient Egyptian society prized order, with strict norms governing relationships to maintain harmony and divine favour. Adultery, for instance, was a serious offence, especially for women who faced divorce or public shaming if caught. You pause by a mud brick wall, imagining a nervous lover sneaking through the night, their heart racing as they dodge prying eyes. Legal texts, like those from Deir el-Medina, record harsh penalties. Men might lose property, while women could be ostracised. Yet, a quirky tidbit lightens the mood. Some Egyptians used love spells to sway forbidden crushes, mixing herbs and incantations to bind a heart. Picture sneaking a charmed potion into someone's beer and hoping it doesn't backfire. Ancient Egypt's version of a risky DM slide. As you creep deeper into the alley, the tension of taboo desires crackles. Society demanded fidelity, especially in marriage contracts you saw in the market, but human nature didn't always comply. You imagine a merchant stealing glances at a weaver's wife, their fleeting touches hidden behind stacks of linen. These affairs were dangerous. Neighbors were nosy, and priests preached divine retribution. Yet, some risked it, driven by passion or defiance. Historians still argue whether these taboos were universally enforced, or if villages turned a blind eye to discreet flings. Some say the rules were stricter for the elite, while others point to tomb inscriptions hinting at leniency for men. You smirk, thinking how the double standard feels oddly familiar, like gossip from a modern soap opera. The quirky side pops up again as you overhear a whispered tale about a love curse. If a scorned spouse suspected cheating, they might visit a priest to curse the rival, using wax figures or chanted spells. You chuckle, imagining the drama. Melt this wax, ruin their date night. These practices show how deeply Egyptians believed in magic's power over desire, blending fear and fascination. But the stakes were real. A woman caught in an affair might lose her dowry or face exile, while men faced lighter consequences. Social clout often shielded them. You feel the unfairness, picturing a woman's anxious glance as she hurries home before dawn. The alley leads to a small tavern, where lamplight spills onto the street. Here, away from the temple's gaze, forbidden desires simmer. Men and women share beer, their laughter too loud, their eyes too bold. You notice a couple in a corner, their hands brushing under the table, their secrecy a fragile shield. These moments of rebellion feel human, raw, like the love poems you read on papyrus. But danger looms. Community spies, often older women, reported gossip to priests or elders. You laugh softly, thinking they'd fit right in with today's neighborhood watch. The Nile's influence weaves through. Even Heret's floods fed the fields that sustained these communities, making social harmony a survival tool. Breaking taboos threatened more than just hearts. It risked the village's balance. As you slip out of the tavern, the night air cools your skin. You imagine the lovers parting, their whispers fading into the dark. Forbidden desire in ancient Egypt was a tightrope, walk thrilling but perilous, with the gods and society watching. The alley's shadows feel alive with their secrets, and you sense the pull of sacred spaces where some of these hidden passions found a strange sanctuary. The temple's glow beckons, promising a place where love, even the forbidden kind, might find divine cover. You're now stepping back into the cool, incense-laden air of a temple, its stone walls flickering with torchlight as you leave the alley's shadows behind. The weight of forbidden desires lingers, but here, in these sacred spaces, love finds a different kind of secrecy. Temple trysts, where passion meets divine approval under the gods' watchful eyes. The Nile's distant pulse hums faintly, tying even these holy encounters to its life-giving rhythm. You're about to sneak into the hidden corners of temples, where lovers meet and sacred and sensual blur in unexpected ways. Mainstream history tells us that temples weren't just for worship. They were social hubs where festivals, rituals, and even romantic rendezvous unfolded. You pause by a carved relief of Hathor, her serene smile hinting at her role as love's patron. During her festivals, temples like this one in Dendera became stages for music, dance, and flirtation, drawing couples seeking divine blessings for their desires. You imagine a young pair slipping behind a column, their whispers drowned by sistrum rattles, stealing a moment under the guise of worship. A quirky tidbit? Some temples had sacred prostitutes, men and women who performed ritual acts of love to honor fertility gods. You raise an eyebrow, thinking it's the ultimate multitasking, devotion and date night in one. As you move deeper, the temple's quiet alcoves feel charged with secrecy. These spaces, veiled by linen curtains, were perfect for clandestine meetings. You picture a priestess and a scribe, their hands brushing as they share a lotus offering, their eyes saying more than their prayers. These trysts weren't always taboo. Hathor's cult encouraged love as a divine act, and festivals loosened social rules. You smirk, imagining the temple as ancient Egypt's hottest nightclub, with less neon and more incense. Historians still argue whether these encounters were truly sacred or just convenient excuses for passion. Some say they were symbolic, tied to fertility rituals, while others insist they were practical outlets for human desire, sanctioned by the gods. The quirky side emerges as you spot a small altar with offerings of honey and wine, gifts to ensure romantic success. Some couples left tiny amulets shaped like hearts or lotus buds, believing they'd sway Hathor's favor. You chuckle, picturing a nervous suitor fumbling his offering, hoping it's enough to win his crush's heart. These rituals tied love to the divine, but they also grounded it in the Nile's world. Lotus flowers, plucked from its banks, were sacred symbols of creation and desire. Remember those fertility potions with crocodile dung? The temple's offerings are a classier echo, using nature's gifts to channel passion. The air feels alive, as if the gods are winking at the lover's boldness. You wander to the temple courtyard, where a festival's afterglow lingers. Torches cast shadows as dancers swirl, their linen dresses catching the light. Couples mingle, their laughter soft but daring, knowing the god's gaze makes this space safer than the village alleys. You imagine a woman slipping a love poem, remember those papyrus verses? Into her partner's hand, their fingers lingering. The temple's sanctity gave cover for such moments, blurring the line between worship and wooing. But it wasn't all carefree. Priests kept watch, ensuring rituals didn't stray too far into scandal. You laugh, thinking they were like cosmic bouncers, keeping the party holy. As the night deepens, you feel the temple's dual nature, sacred and sensual, a place where love could hide in plain sight. The Nile's influence persists, its lotus and water woven into every ritual, reminding you that even divine trysts depend on the river's gifts. You picture a couple leaving the temple, their steps light but cautious, their bond sealed by Hathor's grace. The courtyard quiets, and you sense the pull of the village again, where ordinary folks chase love without the god's spotlight, their hearts just as fierce. You're now back in the dusty streets of an ancient Egyptian village, the temple's incense fading as the hum of everyday life surrounds you. The sun beats down, and you hear the clink of tools and the chatter of neighbors, their voices weaving stories of love among commoners. The Nile's rhythm pulses nearby, tying these ordinary lives to its flow, just as it did for pharaohs and priests. You're about to mingle with farmers, weavers and fishers, whose crushes and courtships unfold in the grind of daily survival, far from the palace's golden glow. Mainstream history tells us that commoners, the backbone of Egyptian society, made up most of the population, living in modest mud-brick homes and working the fields or trades. Their romances weren't recorded in grand tombs, but in fleeting momentured glances over a loom or a laugh by the riverbank. You pause by a woman spinning flax, her fingers nimble as she eyes a potter across the street. Love here is practical, woven into chores and community, yet it sparks with the same heat you saw in those papyrus poems. A quirky tidbit? Some villagers carved love tokens from wood or bone, simple trinkets exchanged as promises. You smile, imagining a fisherman slipping a tiny fish-shaped charm to his sweetheart, hoping it's smoother than his pickup lines. As you wander, the village feels alive with quiet flirtations. A young man hauls Nile fish, flexing a bit too much as a girl passes with a water jar. You can almost hear her teasing him about his soggy sandals, their banter a dance as old as the river. These moments are stolen between tasks, grinding grain, mending nets, or baking bread. Unlike the elite, commoners had no scribes to pen their love songs, but their feelings were just as fierce. Historians still argue whether these relationships were driven by choice or necessity. Some say village marriages were arranged for land or labor, while others point to graffiti on village wall-scratched hearts or namisas, proof of personal passion. You smirk, thinking those etchings are ancient Egypt's version of Jake plus Amy for Eva. The quirky side pops up again as you notice a group of women gossiping by a communal oven. They're giggling about a love potion brewed from dates and Nile water, sworn to make a crush swoon. You chuckle, picturing the poor guy sipping it, clueless, while his admirer bats her coal-lined eyes. These homemade charms, less formal than temple spells, show how commoners took love into their own hands. But life wasn't easy long. Days in the fields left little time for romance, and the Nile's floods dictated their survival. A bad harvest could delay a wedding or strain a couple's dreams. You feel the weight of their world, where love is a luxury squeezed into the margins of labor. You linger by a small house, where a couple shares a meal of bread and onions, their laughter soft in the evening light. They're not wealthy, but their bond feels solid, built on shared work and small gestures: combed hair, a mended tunic. Remember those market contracts? They apply here too, with families pooling resources to start a couple's life. But in these moments, you see the poetry of ordinary love, no less vivid than the elites. A man might carve his wife a spoon, a quiet "I care" etched in wood. You laugh, thinking how that spoon might outlast a pharaoh's statue. The village's rhythm, tied to the Nile, shapes these romances. Floods bring hope, droughts bring tension, but love persists. As the sun dips, casting long shadows, you feel the warmth of these simple connections. Commoners' crushes, though unrecorded, pulse through the village like the river itself. You imagine a young woman waiting by the Nile for her suitor, her heart racing as his boat nears. The village's hum fades, pulling you toward the broader dance of gender roles, where men and women navigate love's rules in this ancient world. You're now standing in the heart of the village, the evening air cooling as the Nile's gentle lap echoes nearby. The commoners' quiet flirtations linger in your mind, but now you're drawn to the broader dance of gender roles, where men and women navigate love's rules in ancient Egypt's tightly woven society. The streets hum with activity: men haul grain, women weave linen, and kids dart between them. Yet every move feels like a step in a choreography of expectation and desire. You're about to unravel how gender shaped romance, from power dynamics to surprising freedoms. Mainstream history tells us that ancient Egyptian society, while patriarchal, gave women more rights than many ancient cultures. You watch a woman haggle confidently at a market stall, her voice firm as she trades linen for fish. Women could own property, initiate divorce, and even inherit land, which gave them leverage in love and marriage. You imagine her negotiating her own dowry, a far cry from the passive brides of other eras. But men held the reign's most public roles, like scribes or priests, were male-dominated, and husbands often controlled household decisions. A quirky tidbit? Some women wore amulets shaped like ankhs, the symbol of life, to assert their role as life-givers in love and motherhood. Picture a woman flashing her ankh pendant like a badge of power, mid-flirt. As you wander, you notice how gender roles play out in romance. Men pursue with gifts. Remember those wooden love tokens? While women signal interest with subtle cues, like a lingering glance or a lotus tucked in their hair. You smirk, thinking it's like an ancient dating app, but with more eye contact and fewer swipes. Women's beauty rituals, like that coal and crocodile fat moisturizer you tried, were partly to attract partners, but also to claim social status. Men, meanwhile, flex their worth through labor or wealth, showing off a good harvest or a well-crafted boat. Historians still argue whether these roles stifled or empowered love. Some say women's rights allowed genuine partnerships, while others point to legal texts showing men's authority over wives. You feel the tension, picturing a couple arguing over who gets the last fig, her voice just as sharp as his. The quirky side emerges as you overhear a group of men joking about a marriage manual scratched on a potsherd, advising husbands to listen to her, but not too much. You laugh, imagining it passed around like a bad self-help book. Yet, women weren't just passive players. Some ran businesses, like brewing beer or selling linen, giving them clout to choose or refuse suitors. You picture a weaver turning down a cocky fisherman, her loom clicking defiantly. Gender roles also bent in private. Men might cook or weave when no one was looking, and women joined men in the fields during harvest. The Nile's rhythm, always there, shaped these dynamics. Its floods demanded cooperation, blurring lines as couples worked side by side to survive. You pause by a home where a woman teaches her daughter to grind grain, their hands moving in sync. Nearby, a man repairs a net, glancing at his wife with a quiet smile. Love here isn't just about attraction, it's about partnership, each role interlocking like the bricks of their home. But it's not equal. Men's voices carried more weight in public, and women faced stricter rules on fidelity, as you saw in the taboo alleys. You chuckle, thinking how a wife might tease her husband about his authority while secretly running the show. The Nile's influence weaves through, its fertility tying women to motherhood and men to providing, yet both chase the same spark you saw in those papyrus poems. As the village settles into dusk, you feel the balance of power and passion in these roles. Men and women dance around each other, bound by rules but bending them with every glance or gift. The air grows festive, hinting at celebrations where these dynamics loosen and love flares under the stars. You're pulled toward the fire of ancient Egypt's festivals, where gender roles sway to the beat of music and desire. You're now swept into the vibrant chaos of an ancient Egyptian festival, the village streets alive with the thrum of drums and the scent of spiced beer. The Nile glimmers under moonlight, its rhythm pulsing through the crowd as you join a celebration that ignites passion and loosens the rules of daily life. The gender roles you just saw, those careful dances of power and flirtations often here, where music, dance, and divine blessings turn the night into a playground for love. You're about to dive into these fiery gatherings, where hearts race and desires flare under the gods' approving gaze. Mainstream history tells us that festivals, like those for Hathor or the Opet celebration, were major events in ancient Egypt, blending worship with social release. You stand in a crowded square, where men and women swirl in linen robes, their laughter mingling with the clink of sistrums. These events, often tied to the Nile's flood, were prime time for romance. Think less solemn ritual, more divine block party. Couples meet, flirt, and sometimes sneak off, their steps lightened by beer and Hathor's blessing. A quirky tidbit? Some festivals featured beauty contests, where women competed to be crowned the most alluring, judged by their dance or charm. You grin, imagining a coal-eyed contestant twirling for the crowd, probably throwing shade at her rivals. As you weave through the throng, the energy is electric. Torches cast golden flickers on faces, and you spot a young man offering a lotus flower to a dancer, her smile bold as she accepts. Festivals like these were matchmakers, loosening the strict rules you saw in the village. Men and women mix freely, their usual rolesmen as providers, women as homemakers blurred by music and wine. You picture a weaver grabbing her crush's hand during a dance, their fingers laced as they spin under the stars. Historians still argue whether these festivals sparked lasting romances or just fleeting flings. Some say they were socially sanctioned hookups, while others point to marriage records spiking post-festival, hinting at deeper bonds. You chuckle, thinking it's like an ancient Valentine's Day with better costumes. The quirky side pops up as you notice a group downing festival beer, spiked with herbs, rumoured to boost desire. You laugh, imagining the bartender's pitch. One sip, and you're Hathor's favourite. These brews, often blessed by priests, tied the celebration to the Nile's fertility, its grains fueling both the beer and the passion. The river's presence is everywhere. Lotus garlands, crown dancers, and offerings of fish or reeds float in nearby pools, honouring the gods who make love possible. Remember those temple trysts? They're echoed here, but louder, wilder, with the whole village joining the party. You feel the heat of the crowd, bodies swaying, eyes locking, as if the gods themselves are nudging hearts together. You pause by a bonfire, where a woman sings a love song, her voice echoing those papyrus poems you read. The crowd sways, some pairing off to whisper in the shadows. These festivals were safe spaces for desire, where the rules of alleys and marriages bent under divine cover. But don't get too lost in the romance priests still patrolled, ensuring things didn't get too wild. You smirk, picturing a stern priest shooing a couple from a dark corner, like a cosmic chaperone. The Nile's flood. Celebrated here. Ties love to life itself fits. Waters promise crops. Babies and new beginnings. You imagine a couple stealing a kiss by the river, their silhouettes blending with the reeds. As the night winds down, the crowd thins, but the energy lingers. You feel the pulse of these festivals, where love was both a gift and a gamble, sanctioned by gods but fueled by human longing. The Nile's glow fades, and you sense a shift, pulling you toward thoughts of love beyond life, where Egypt's obsession with eternity shapes even the heart's final beat. You're now standing on a quiet hill overlooking the Nile, its waters shimmering under a twilight sky, the village's hum and the tomb's silence fading into a soft, reflective calm. The journey through ancient Egypt's love and intimacy's riverbank glances, papyrus poems, and eternal vouchers brought you here, to a moment where you ponder how those ancient heartbeats echo in today's world. The Nile's eternal flow ties past to present, and you're about to explore how Egypt's romantic legacy shapes modern hearts, from love's rituals to its timeless struggles. Mainstream history tells us that ancient Egyptian ideas about love influenced later cultures, from Greek poetry to modern notions of romance. You gaze at the river, imagining how its rhythms inspired the love songs you read, their lotus imagery still alive in today's wedding bouquets or Valentine's cards. Egyptians saw love as a force of creation, like the Nile's floods, a belief that lingers in our own stories of soulmates and eternal bonds. A quirky tidbit? Modern perfumes still use lotus and myrrh, echoing the scented oils you smelled in that beauty courtyard. You smile, thinking how a spritz of cologne might channel Hathor's charm, even if we've swapped crocodile fat for less adventurous ingredients. As you sit by the riverbank, the parallels unfold. Ancient couples, like those in the village, balanced passion with practicality marriage contracts, shared chores, stolen kisses. You see the same dance today. Couples navigating careers, bills, and date nights. Their love, a mix of poetry and pragmatism. Remember those market dowries? They're not unlike modern prenups or shared bank accounts, binding hearts with legal ink. Historians still argue whether Egypt's romantic ideals were unique or universal. Some say their emphasis on mutual respect, seen in women's property rights, set a foundation for later equality in love, while others see their story as just one thread in humanity's tapestry. You chuckle, imagining a modern couple arguing over who forgot to pay the Wi-Fi bill, their spat as old as those over neglected goats. The quirky side pops up as you think of Egypt's love spells, like those papyrus charms or festival beers. Today's equivalent might be a flirty text or a dating app algorithm, both chasing that spark of connection. The Nile's influence, always present, reminds you of nature's role in love then and now. Just as Egyptians tied romance to the river's floods, we link love to seasons, from springtime weddings to cozy winter proposals. You picture a modern couple snapping a selfie by a river, their smiles echoing those festival dances under torchlight. The gods may have faded, but their archetypes linger. Hathor, in every love song, Bees, in every lucky charm, tucked in a pocket. You feel the weight of Egypt's legacy in small human moments. The love poems, with their honeyed words, live on in our own letters and lyrics, while the tomb paintings of eternal couples mirror our hopes for lasting love. Even the taboo alleys with their whispered secrets find echoes in today's scandals and gossip. You laugh softly, thinking how ancient gossips would have loved a good Twitter thread. The Nile, still flowing, ties it all together, reminder that love, like water, adapts but endures. You imagine a couple today, maybe in Cairo or New York, sharing a quiet moment, their bond as timeless as the river's current. As the stars emerge, the air grows softer. The Nile's ripples a gentle lullaby. Your mind drifts, the vibrant images of ancient Egypt, its markets, temples and tombs fading into a warm haze. You're safe here, wrapped in the glow of stories that have carried countless others to rest. The river's flow slows in your thoughts, its waters cradling every whispered vow, every stolen glance. Let the day's weight slip away, like sand through your fingers, as you sink deeper into calm. The Nile carries you now, its current soft, its embrace eternal, guiding you toward dreams as peaceful as a lotus on still water.